Hi, I'm Dan, this is at Midlife Crisis Motorcyclist, and this is the Honda CB1000 Hornet, a bike we are promised stings harder than ever. Now, given it has a 157 horsepower Fireblade engine and costs from £8,999, I'm not sure if that's intended as a warning for the potential buyers, or it's just Honda trolling the rest of the motorbike industry with just how cheap it can make a bike like this compared with the others in the market it's up against. It's literally thousands of pounds less. Whichever way you cut it, it is an awful lot of engine, an awful lot of bike, and not a lot of money. And for a rider of my experience levels, a slightly intimidating prospect, I will confess. But while we wait for the brave pills to kick in, let's just have a look at what we've got here. Now, Honda has kept us waiting a while for this bike. It's been a year since we first saw it, and to the point where we're now actually riding it. But here we are, and now that the CB1000 is here, it completes a 3-bike lineup for the Hornet range, starting with the CB500, the CB750, and now this CB1000. Now, I feel like I've got a bit of an affinity with the Hornet because I actually did my Mod 1 and Mod 2 training on a CB750. I actually passed my test on the same bike, and I also used it for my first proper ride with a fresh licence in my pocket. I took one around Wales, enjoying my newfound freedom. So I feel like I've got a bit of an understanding of what the bike's about and the appeal of its combination of kind of tech, performance, and just general affordability. In terms of the CB1000, there are two main models. We have the standard one, which costs £8,999, then we have the SP that we see here for £9,999. They're both built around the same new twin spar steel frame. This is unique to the Hornet apparently, and they also have the same combination of electronics and rider support systems that we've come to know from the other Hornets in the range. So that means a full range of configurable rider aids. So you've got 3 riding modes, 2 custom ones where you can set up things like traction control, engine braking, throttle response, wheelie control, all these kind of things. So that makes it a very kind of configurable and customizable bike that you can tune to your own particular tastes. I think things like traction control and wheelie control might be quite useful today, but I guess we're going to find out. Of course, the star of the show is the engine, which is the 1000cc 4-cylinder inline from the 2017 era Fireblade. It's been slightly retuned for kind of a slightly more torquey, kind of flexible feel than it had in the Fireblade, and it puts out 150 horsepower on the standard bike and 104 newton meters of torque, and then on this SP version it's 157 horsepower and 107 newton meters of torque. The extra power coming from a flap in the exhaust which opens above 5,700 RPM just to free up the breathing somewhat and just give it a bit of extra top end, not like it really needs it by all accounts. The SP also gets some nice extra features, so the Showa non-adjustable forks on the standard bike have been upgraded to fully adjustable ones on this one. You get a fully adjustable Öhlins rear shock, you get Brembo Stylema brakes on the front, and there's also a standard quick shifter on the SP, whereas that's optional on the standard bike. However you look at it, it's a lot of bike for the money, and if you try and compare it with some of the rivals, well, it must make pretty depressing reading for those other manufacturers who have got bikes in this market. So you've got things like the Suzuki GSX S1000, that's nearly 12 grand, KTM Duke 990, that's 13 grand, Yamaha MT10, 14 grand, and so it goes on. So even with this SP version, the CB1000 Hornet is undercutting the rivals by quite some margin, and I just don't see that there's another bike in the market that offers so much power for so little money. And remember, this is Honda, this is not some Chinese startup trying to establish itself in the market with a, a headline grabbing price. This is one of the biggest motorcycle manufacturers in the world, and it's really gone in hard with this. So yeah, really, really excited to ride it. I am, as I say, somewhat intimidated given that I'm here on the press launch with some of the fastest and most furious from the world of motorcycling journalism, so I'm going to have to kind of up my game a bit there, but hey, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Righto, so have the brave pills kicked in, and am I ready to try and tame this 1000cc Hornet, which is by some significant margin the fastest and most powerful bike I have yet ridden, and on paper quite a scary beast. But is it in fact as terrifying as the numbers suggest that it might be? Well, knowing the 750 version as I do, given that that was the bike I learnt to ride on, I passed my test on, did everything from kind of mod 1 wobbling to the actual test and then my first proper ride, I do feel I'm in kind of familiar territory to a degree, because what was good about that 750 Hornet was its kind of combination of friendliness and aggression. So it was a user-friendly bike, easy to get along with, but it was also quite fierce, or it felt it to a newbie rider like myself. You know, it was quite pointy, quite aggressive with the power delivery and things like that. So, and what's this like? Well, same but more so, a lot more so. More than a third more power for starters, which is a lot to be getting on with, isn't it? In a bike that weighs, I mean, only another 10 kilos or so, maybe not even that. So this is 212 kilos for the SP, 211 for the standard bike. But for all that, I'm surprised after the initial fear factor how kind of manageable the bike feels. So the Hornet name, and it makes sense when you think about it, derives from how the bike looks from overhead. So it's got that kind of narrow waist, kind of stingy tail kind of shape of an actual Hornet. So that's where the bike gets its name from. And that kind of narrow waisted thing with this new frame is really, it makes it very user friendly. So for all the intimidation of the power, it's actually quite easy to get along with. The riding position is reasonably aggressive, I would say. So, but then it's a sporty naked, isn't it? So you'd expect a reasonably aggressive riding position. It's more, the weight's a lot further forward than the CB1000R, for instance. So they've got to put more weight over the front to give you more kind of sense of what that front wheel's up to, and also for a more sporty riding position, and you definitely get that. But it's not uncomfortable. It feels like you could ride it all day, and it kind of gets you in the frame of mind. And one thing about this bike is the agility. It feels super pointy. You know, this is a big bike, it's a litre bike, but the way it encourages you to chuck it around is absolutely incredible. It just seems to dance on the nose. I started the day a little nervous, but pretty quickly I've realised the bike's kind of on your side, and it really encourages you to kind of throw your weight around and just kind of dance around the bike and really kind of enjoy that manoeuvrability and kind of the sense of fun it gives you. Yeah, it's really, yeah, it's pointy. Stings harder, like they say. So I appreciate that. And at the start of the ride that was a little bit intimidating, but now that I've kind of got my head around it, I'm appreciating it a bit more. And in a situation like this where you can barreling into a hairpin bend at a fairly enthusiastic pace, you just feel you can stand it on the nose and it'll just, it's playful. But what about the engine? I can't believe I've been riding it this long and not talked about the engine yet, because that really is the main event. And to be riding a bike with, you know, a genuine sports bike engine, a litre bike engine, all for less than 10 grand. So what it has me in mind of, this combination of a really big, powerful engine in a otherwise kind of affordable and kind of usable bike, it kind of brings to mind muscle cars, you know, like a Ford Mustang. You know, it's a relatively cheap car, but one with a massive engine that kind of dominates the experience and its sound and its power. So I know people talk about kind of Triumph rockets and things like that as muscle bikes, but to my mind this is kind of more honest to that theory. You know, it's a blue collar hero, it's an affordable bike that anyone could afford, but it's got the performance of a superbike costing twice as much. I mean, okay, you know, on a track maybe not, but on the road. And one of the things I really like about, and has surprised me, is just how usable the performance is. You know, when I looked at the stats, I thought, oh my god, here's a 157 horsepower engine, this, you know, peak power 11,000 revs or something. You know, you're gonna have to, unless you're completely on it and going really fast, it's just going to be wasted. I thought, you know, as a rookie rider, it would just feel kind of out of reach. You know, this performance was there at the kind of upper reaches of the rev range, but not actually usable. But actually, it's totally usable, and I'm surprised at how easily and I'm using all the revs, or maybe not all of them, but you know, plenty of revs. And it's just such an exciting experience. The sound, the smoothness. You know, a 4-cylinder engine is something pretty special in this day and age, and actually in some ways it's easier to ride than the twin on the 750, which I found quite binary in its kind of on-off throttle performance. You know, you've got those two big cylinders, whereas this one you've got the 4 little ones buzzing away, and it's a lot smoother on and off the throttle. So in some ways it's actually easier to ride because you've got more linearity in the throttle response. And I've got to say, I do prefer it in the standard riding mode, not the sport, which is just a bit grabby. But it's just got huge breadth, so it'll pull from relatively low revs and then it'll sing out to the high revs. It's just got such a range. It's absolutely addictive, and it works really well with the quick shift as well. I know I've said previously on the channel that I'm not always keen on using quick shifters. I prefer to shift manually, but on this bike it seems to work really well. It's very slick up and down, and the huge rev range of the motor is just, it's addictive. It's absolutely, it's a lot of fun, and it just keeps going back to that thing. It's less than 10 grand, less than 10 grand even for this fancy SP version. Do you feel the benefits of the fancy suspension? I think you do. You know, the bike kind of, it's got that float. It's a short bike, short wheelbase, so it's very pointy, agile, but although there's not many bumps on these Spanish roads, because it feels like we're going pretty quickly, you know, we're putting a lot of brake and acceleration in, the bike doesn't dive or pick up its front end, well, unless you want it to. I've seen a few people doing some big wheelies, but that's not me. But like all quality suspension, you just got that kind of sense of float that just gives you huge confidence in what the tyres are doing. I've not tried the standard bike yet, so I don't know how that compares, but if I had the choice, I think the SP with its gold suspension, because let's face it, gold suspension's got to be better, hasn't it? Would be it. So there we go. I rode a Hornet and I didn't get stung. And that is an absolute buzz, if you pardon another insect related pun. There we go, and I think probably now I need to go and draw breath, because there's only so much excitement you can take in one hit, and this bike delivers a hell of a lot. So there we go, that's the end of my day on the Honda CB1000 Hornet SP, and yes, I lived to tell the tale, though I have to confess, at the start of the ride I did quite honestly feel somewhat out of my depth, based on the fact that it's a very powerful and quite an intimidating bike. You know, it's a Fireblade engine, it's quite sharp and pointy, very responsive. It's not a relaxing riding experience, you know, when you've not had much sleep and you know, it's all a bit intimidating, all that kind of thing. But after a few more miles and once I got my head around it, I was actually pretty impressed at just how kind of user-friendly and accommodating it is, despite being powerful and scary and all that kind of stuff. So it's got that same kind of usability and sort of friendliness of the CB750 version that I learnt to ride on to a degree, but it's just got more power, more performance, more noise, more excitement. And as you would expect, that engine completely dominates the riding experience, dominates the look of the bike, and in some senses it's kind of like you're buying a Fireblade engine and you get the rest of the bike thrown in for free, which is quite a nice thing to think about, really, isn't it? And the fact that the whole package delivers on that as well is really, really impressive. So, you know, it's not just a set of wheels bolted to the engine, the parts, the ride quality, the suspension, the brakes, all that kind of stuff works really well too. And it all just hangs together as a complete package. Really, really impressive. I even quite like the look of it. I have to say, some of these kind of modern hyper naked, sporty nakeds, whatever you want to call them, can look a little bit too kind of aggressive, a bit mad. I think there's a nice balance in the way that this bike looks. It's kind of got that kind of modern vibe, but it's not too over the top. And I think this kind of SP black and gold combination looks really, really smart as well. Would I have the SP over the standard bike? Well, I've not tried the standard bike yet, but when you look at the parts that you get on it, you know, the adjustable forks, the O-rings, the Brembo brakes, all those other bits and bobs, and you factor in that it only costs another £1,000 over the standard bike, it feels like a bit of a no-brainer, doesn't it? Because even at that price, it undercuts all the rivals by a healthy margin, several £1,000s, leaving you scope in the budget to maybe delve into the options, get some of the nice upgrade packages like the CNC machine foot pegs and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, you could add those and still have a bike that's way cheaper than anything else with even close to equivalent power or performance. So yeah, the SP feels like a bit of a no-brainer, really, doesn't it? So there we go. I hope that was an interesting insight into what the new CB1000 Hornet is like. If you like the video, please hit like. If you're not already subscribed, please do so. And if you'd like to join me in the comments, I'd love to hear what you think about the bike. So get involved in the conversation below the video. And for now, I'll say goodbye. Thanks for watching and ride safe.